Welcome to a deep dive into the archives. Today we are opening, well, a very specific historical file.
Yeah, we're stepping back into the spring of 1988.
Right. And we're looking at a stack of local newspaper clippings from a town called Fairfield, Illinois.
And I think it's important to just clarify our mission today right up front.
Oh, definitely. We are not here to act like armchair detectives.
No, not at all. We aren't trying to forcefully resolve a cold case using, the benefit of modern hindsight.
Exactly. Instead, we are sitting down as archival researchers. We are going to read the contemporary historical record to understand how a community and its investigators experienced a genuinely shocking discovery in real time.
Just exactly as it unfolded.
Right. So to get into the right headspace, I want you, the listener, to just imagine you're sitting at your kitchen table.
A quiet Sunday morning.
Exactly. You've got a hot cup of coffee in one hand, and you were unfolding the local Sunday paper.
You're expecting the usual, right? The weather report, high school sports scores, maybe the grocery circulars.
Yeah, just a completely ordinary domestic routine, and then your eyes land on a headline that suddenly rewrites the last 4 years of local gossip in your town.
It's a headline that takes a neighborhood rumor, the story people have been whispering about for years, and it crashes it right into physical reality.
It is the exact moment where the mundane everyday simply collides with the extraordinary.
And the tension preserved in these Fairfield newspapers is fascinating.
It really is.
Because it highlights the vast difference between human rumor-like, the stories we invent to make sense of the unknown, and the quiet, undeniable physical reality of what actually happened.
When you read through these pages, you're watching a town grapple with the realization that the truth was sitting right next to them the entire time.
Just completely silent.
Yeah. So let's start with that Sunday morning discovery.
Okay.
It's April 17th, 1988. It's roughly 9:30 in the morning.
Right, early spring in the Midwest.
And we are about 2 miles northeast of Fairfield. A man named Leo Shelby and his son, Bill, are over at the property of James Shelby.
And James is Leo's nephew.
Right. So they're doing typical seasonal yard chores. They're helping James seed his lawn and spread straw.
Just normal yard work.
Exactly. But at some point, James realizes they're running low on lawn seed, so he leaves the property to run into town to buy more.
To really visualize this, you have to understand the nature of rural Midwestern properties in the late 1980s.
Space is abundant.
Exactly. On large plots of land, especially outside city limits, things just tend to accumulate.
Yeah, it wasn't unusual for families to keep broken down machinery or old vehicles on the edge of their property.
Right, perhaps intending to use them for spare parts eventually, or simply because it was, too much of a hassle to tow them away.
So on this specific property, there is an abandoned car sitting approximately 150 yards from Jones's house.
And it had been sitting there for about 10 years.
Over a decade. And nature reclaims things rapidly.
It really does. This car was entirely obscured by tall weeds, creeping vines, just thick brush.
It had fundamentally become part of the landscape, just a rusted lump under a mound of vegetation.
Right. So James is gone, running his errand. Leo and his son Bill are left working in the yard.
And while working, Bill happens to glance over at this overgrown, abandoned car.
He looks through the window, and he spots some clothing and a blanket inside.
Now, in a movie, this is the moment the music swells,
Oh, yeah.
The character drops their rake in horror, and everything grinds to a halt.
But that is not what happens here.
No, it's not. And that is a perfect example of normalcy bias.
Human beings do not naturally default to the most horrific conclusion when going about their daily routines.
Right, Bill doesn't panic. The reporting actually quotes Bill, saying he initially thought it was just old clothes, but that it, quote, looked a little odd.
He decides to just wait for James to return with the grass seed before making a definitive judgment.
He literally waits for the homeowner to get back to confirm what he is looking at.
Take a second and picture that.
I know, it's wild.
You have the most domestic, mundane chores imaginable taking place.
Spreading straw, waiting on a run to the hardware store.
And right alongside it, you have the slow, methodical processing of a severely decomposed body inside an overgrown jump car.
It's the pacing of real life.
Yeah.
People process shocking anomalies very slowly when they are completely out of context.
And that context makes another detail from the reporting even more striking.
Which one?
The sheer proximity to everyday life. Leo Shelby, the uncle, told reporters that the previous fall, he had actually helped tear down a house on that exact property.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, He mentioned he was all around that car last fall. They had demolished a structure and used heavy machinery to push the debris into a pit.
A pit that they dug only about 10 feet away from this very car.
10 feet.
Wait, 10 feet. They were operating heavy excavation equipment, bringing down a house, doing massive, loud, ground-shaking property work, a mere 10 feet away from a car with a body in it.
Yeah, and they had absolutely no idea.
None at all.
It illustrates how effectively the overgrown brush had camouflaged the vehicle, sure.
Right.
But it also speaks to how focused we are on the task in front of us. If you aren't looking for a tomb, you don't see a tomb.
You just see a patch of weeds you need to steer the backhoe around.
Exactly.
That is deeply unsettling. You can be that close to a profound tragedy and remain completely oblivious.
Yeah. So James gets back with the seed, they walk over to the car, and they finally confirm that it is, in fact, a human corpse.
The authorities are called in. Fairfield Police Officer Jimmy Joe McCleary and Wayne County Coroner Bob Johnson arrive at the scene.
And the immediate, obvious question for the authorities is identity. Who is in this car?
Right. But the initial visual inspection offers very little.
The remains are heavily decomposed. Officer McCleary states they couldn't even determine the biological sex of the body just by looking.
Though the remains were dressed in heavy, male-styled clothing.
However, the authorities do find a billfold on the body.
And inside that billfold is the identification of Larry Shelby.
Larry Shelby, the brother of James Shelby, the man whose property they are currently standing on.
Yes. The family already had a grim suspicion the moment the body was found on family land, obviously.
Right. But to be scientifically certain, Coroner Bob Johnson initiates a forensic identification process.
He requests dental records from a Veterans Administration hospital, and those records are sent to an odontologist in St. Louis.
I want to pause there because we throw around terms like odontologist easily today.
Yeah, we do.
But how did that actually work in 1988? Today, you can pull up a digital scan and email it across the country in 3 seconds.
Right, it's instant now.
So how were they confirming identity over a weekend back then?
You know, an odontologist is a forensic dentist. They specialize in identifying unknown remains by comparing the dental work fillings, extractions, root canals to known dental records.
And in 1988, this was a highly physical process.
Highly physical. The coroner would have to request the physical files from the VA.
That means someone is literally going into a filing cabinet.
Yes. Pulling the manila folder with Larry's physical x-ray films and dental charts.
And then what, putting them on a courier truck or driving them directly to St. Louis?
Exactly. The odontologist then physically puts the x-rays on a light box and manually compares them to the skull or post-mortem x-rays taken of the remains.
And working over that weekend, the St. Louis odontologist positively confirms the identity.
The man in the car is Larry Shelby.
Once that identity is locked in, the newspaper coverage shifts.
They start painting a picture of who Larry Shelby was, and it is a very specific, deeply tragic profile.
When he disappeared, Larry was about 40 years old. He was a lifelong resident of Fairfield.
He was a former oil field worker. Both of his parents were deceased.
He had an ex-wife named Janet and a 13-year-old son named Alan, both living right there in town.
Crucially, he was also a Vietnam veteran. He had served for 2 years in the mid-1960s.
And the contemporary reporting explicitly states that he suffered from a, quote, nervous disorder, unquote, resulting from the war.
At the time of his disappearance, he was drawing a 90% disability pension from the Veterans Administration.
That phrasing, nervous disorder, really jumps out.
It perfectly encapsulates the era. This is before post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, was a widely understood or comprehensively treated condition.
Especially in rural America.
Right.
The diagnostic term PTSD was officially added to the psychiatric manual in 1980, but culturally and medically, it took a very long time for that understanding to trickle down into local VA treatment protocols and public awareness.
Calling it a nervous disorder drastically understates the severity of what he was likely experiencing.
A 90% disability rating from the VA is exceptionally high.
It indicates a near-total impairment, meaning his trauma profoundly affected his ability to hold down a job or function in daily civilian life.
And the reporter spoke to his family, who confirmed that he was really struggling.
His ex-wife, Janet, noted that his mental state had changed significantly for the worse after a visit to his sick mother back in March of 1984.
That downward spiral seemed to accelerate. They ended up divorcing a few months later, in June of 1984, after 10 years of marriage.
Other relatives mentioned that in the months leading up to his disappearance, he had been self-medicating, drinking heavily.
It creates a profile of a highly vulnerable man.
He is carrying profound, untreated trauma. He has lost his marriage, his family unit is fractured, his mother is ill, and he is struggling with substance abuse.
A person in that specific set of circumstances, living in a rural area in the 1980s, is incredibly susceptible to simply slipping through the cracks of society.
And Slippy did. The timeline published in the papers says Larry Shelby was last seen in November of 1984.
But let's do the math here. He vanishes in November 1984. His body is found in the overgrown car in April 1988.
That is 3.5 years later.
The glaring question is, how does a man go missing in a small town, end up in a car 150 yards from his own brother's house, and stay there undiscovered for nearly 4 years?
To understand that gap, we have to look at the anatomy of the missing persons report itself.
Because even though Larry was last seen by the family in November of 1984, he wasn't officially reported missing to the police until late 1985.
Hang on. A full year.
Yeah, a full year.
If someone doesn't text back in 24 hours today, we worry. We check their location on their phone. We blast their friends on social media.
Right.
Why would a family wait an entire year to involve the police?
It comes down to the realities of communication and societal expectations in the 1980s.
Without a digital footprint, no cell phone tracking, no social media activity, no instant bank alerts, an adult living a solitary or somewhat transient lifestyle could legitimately fall out of contact for months at a time without triggering immediate panic.
His sister, Kathy Fairclough, told the paper she had tried to find him herself. She was making phone calls to different VA hospitals, thinking he might have sought treatment.
She checked with local contacts.
But why wouldn't they just go to his apartment or his brother's property to look for him?
Well, his cousin, Bill Shelby, pointed out that Larry actually had his own apartment in town at the time he vanished.
So the family assumed he had either moved on, was laying low, or was perhaps traveling.
The idea of him abandoning his apartment to go sleep in his brother's junk car out in the country didn't make any logical sense to them.
So it wasn't a place they thought to search.
So they are dealing with this ambiguous absence, making phone calls, hitting dead ends.
What was the catalyst that finally pushed them to go to the police and make it official a year later?
It was a family milestone. In May of 1985, Larry's mother passed away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When her estate was finally dispersed, and Larry did not show up to claim his share or attend to the family matters, his sister Kathy realized this wasn't just a period of isolation.
She told reporters that if he were alive, he would have, quote, come out of the woodwork for that.
Missing a major financial and familial event was the proof they needed that he was genuinely gone, not just avoiding them.
So, late 1985, the police finally get the official missing persons report.
You would think the detectives would start pulling his records and find a completely cold trail. Just a flat line, starting in November 1984.
But instead, they find the exact opposite.
Yes. The investigators pull the thread, and they discover that Larry's paper trail is highly active.
This is where a local missing persons case suddenly transforms into a complex federal financial investigation.
While Larry was missing, and while his sister was desperately calling VA hospitals, his Veterans Administration pension checks were still being delivered to his last known address.
And more importantly, they were being cashed.
That immediately escalates things. You aren't just dealing with the Fairfield local police anymore.
The historical file shows the Veterans Administration, the U.S. Securities Commission, and the Secret Service all descend on this case.
And just to clarify, for anyone wondering why the Secret Service is involved, their mandate isn't just protecting the president.
Right. They are the primary agency responsible for investigating crimes against the Federal Treasury Department, which includes the forgery and theft of federal pension checks.
The federal authorities traced the cash checks, and this introduces a new figure into the archival record.
Ruth Edna Caudill, who is known locally as Toots.
She was Larry's landlady at the time he disappeared.
But the fraud went beyond just intercepting his monthly VA checks in the mail. There was a secondary scheme involving Larry's vehicle.
How did that work?
According to Wayne County State's Attorney Steve Swafford, Caudill applied for a duplicate title to Larry's truck after he vanished.
We really have to understand how easy that was in the paper-based system of the 1980s.
You didn't need biometric verification or digital two-factor authentication.
You could literally walk into a county clerk's office, fill out a paper form claiming the original title was lost, forge a signature, pay a small fee, and the state would mail you a duplicate title.
That is terrifyingly simple.
It was heavily reliant on the honor system.
So once Caudill obtained that fraudulent duplicate title, she transferred the ownership of the truck to a 63-year-old local man named Ralph Feather.
In June of 1987, the paper trail catches up with Feather. He formally represented to the Illinois Secretary of State that he had bought the vehicle directly from Larry Shelby.
Because of that lie, Feather was arraigned on a Class 2 felony charge for making a materially false statement on a title application.
So you have this massive paper chase going on. The feds are looking into the checks. The state is prosecuting the truck title fraud.
But Caudle, the landlady, isn't just sitting quietly while this happens.
The newspaper shows she was actively feeding the police incredibly dark, violent rumors about what happened to her missing tenant.
She made multiple statements to authorities claiming that Larry Shelby had been murdered.
State's Attorney Swafford noted that she specifically claimed she was present when Larry was shot with a shotgun.
Hang on, this makes zero sense.
Right.
She is cashing a missing man's federal checks, which is a massive crime. Why on earth would she volunteer a story about a shotgun murder to the police?
If you are trying to get away with financial fraud, the last thing you want is the police looking for a murder victim connected to the accounts you are draining.
It's like a magician's sleight of hand, but a terrible one. Was she waving a bright red flag called shotgun murder over in a field just to distract them from the pension fraud happening at the bank?
It is entirely possible it was a distraction tactic, or perhaps a pathological need for attention, or an attempt to preemptively explain why he would never return to claim his property.
Whatever her psychological motivation, she didn't just tell a vague story.
She gave the police specific geographic locations. She pointed to places where she claimed his body had been dumped.
And the authorities had no choice but to take these claims seriously.
And they really did. The archive details the sheer amount of state resources poured into her stories.
They brought in Mark Johnsey, a forensic anthropologist with the Illinois State Police.
He spent 2 full days taking core soil samples at an empty field where Caudle said the body was dumped.
Let's explain what that actually entails. Forensic anthropology is the study of human remains in a legal context.
When Johnsey is taking core soil samples, he is using a specialized tool, like a T-handle auger, to extract deep cylindrical tubes of dirt from the field.
He isn't just blindly digging holes. He is analyzing the stratification, the layers of the soil.
What exactly is he looking for in a tube of dirt if the body might have been moved?
He is looking for chemical signatures. As a human body decomposes, it drastically alters the chemistry of the surrounding soil.
It changes the pH levels, it leaches large amounts of calcium and phosphorus from the bones, and it deposits specific fatty acids into the dirt.
Even if a body was dumped in a field and later moved, that chemical footprint remains in the soil horizons for years.
Johnsey spent 2 days analyzing these cores, looking for any trace of disturbed earth or chemical decomposition.
They also excavated a former Fairfield town dump based on another tip.
The physical labor, the taxpayer expense. They are excavating town dumps and drilling chemical core samples, all based on the sensational stories of a landlady who is simultaneously committing federal treasury fraud.
They were chasing a violent ghost through the dirt.
And they found absolutely nothing.
Which perfectly illustrates how the noise of an investigation can completely blind everyone involved.
For years, the official search for Larry Shelby was defined by federal indictments, forged titles, and these loud, dramatic tales of a shotgun murder.
The police were looking outward into fields and dump sites, driven by human deception.
But then, we flip back to that quiet Sunday morning in April 1988.
When the authorities finally opened the door of that overgrown jump car, the physical evidence inside tells a completely contradictory story.
It strips away all the noise, the rumors, the federal paper chases, and leaves us with a quiet, baffling reality.
Let's examine the scene inside the car exactly as the historical record describes it.
The body is lying in the front seat.
The clothing is the first major piece of physical evidence. Investigators note that Larry is wearing 2 pairs of pants, long underwear, an insulated coat, overalls, and boots.
Okay, let's unpack this. He disappeared in November of 1984.
Finding him dressed in long underwear, double layers of pants, and a heavy insulated coat strongly points to a cold weather event.
It perfectly aligns with his last known sighting. Even though they were discovering him on a mild spring day in April, the physical evidence freezes him in the exact conditions of a Midwestern November.
It locks in the timeline. But the condition of the remains and his belongings also tells a scientific story.
A car sitting in a field for 4 years goes through extreme temperature fluctuations.
In the summer, it becomes an oven, accelerating certain types of decay. In the winter, it acts like a freezer.
Over 3.5 years, the organic tissue decomposes, but the synthetic fibers of an insulated coat, the leather of a billfold, and certain paper items are preserved by that very same environment.
And it is what they found preserved in his pockets that completely dismantles the landlady's rumors of a violent robbery and murder.
Inside his pocket, they pull out the billfold, and it contains over $200 in cash.
$200 in 1984 is the equivalent of roughly $600 today.
It is not an insignificant amount of money to be carrying around.
The presence of that cash almost definitively argues against a robbery. If someone ambushed him, shot him with a shotgun, and dumped him, they would not leave $200 in his pocket.
But that wasn't the only thing they found in his pocket.
And this is the detail that absolutely floored me when reading the archive.
Also in his pocket was the genuine, original paper title to his truck.
It is the ultimate triumph of physical evidence over human deception.
The poetic irony of it is staggering. Think about the massive scale of the investigation going on outside that car.
You have federal agencies chasing a fraudulent paper trail across the county. A 63-year-old man is facing a felony for a forged duplicate
The
title.
landlady is under federal investigation.
Come on.
All this legal chaos, all these resources spent fighting over the ownership of this truck.
And the entire time, for 4 years, the genuine piece of paper, the actual title, is sitting quietly in Larry's pocket, just 150 yards from his own brother's front door.
It is a detail no novelist would dare write because it is almost too perfect.
And looking at the broader scene inside the vehicle, there are other deeply personal details that shift the narrative.
Around the remains, investigators find several empty cans of mellow yellow.
His ex-wife, Janet, explicitly noted to reporters that mellow yellow was one of his preferred drinks.
That detail really changes how you view the space. It transforms it from a sterile, tragic crime scene into a remarkably intimate space.
He didn't just end up dumped in that car. He spent time in there. He brought his favorite soda. He was bundled up against the cold.
It implies agency, or at least a period of resting there. And when the state police crime scene technician, Bob Collier, examines the scene, the physical reality pushes back against the violent rumors even harder.
Collier is remarkably blunt when speaking to the press. He states clearly that there is zero evidence of outside force.
He says, quote, "We don't have a bullet, we don't have a knife, we don't have a pill bottle, we don't have a suicide note."
Furthermore, Mark Johnsey, the anthropologist who had been drilling soil samples just months prior, examines the remains.
He notes there is no soft tissue left to examine for toxicology, but the bones themselves show absolutely no signs of trauma.
There are no fractures, no shotgun pellets scoring on the bone, nothing that would corroborate Ruth Edna Caudle's story of a violent shooting.
So this leaves the local authorities in a profound legal bind.
You have a family that has been tormented by rumors of a violent murder for years.
You have a landlady who literally confessed to witnessing a shooting.
But the physical evidence shows a man bundled up in his own clothes, with his own money and title, drinking his favorite soda, with zero signs of violence.
This brings us to the core dilemma of the coroner and the state's attorney, and how the legal system is forced to deal with ambiguity.
Wayne County State's Attorney Steve Swafford is quoted outlining the harsh legal reality.
He explains, "If it cannot be shown by some means that a homicide took place, there won't be a murder charge. If you can't prove he died by homicidal means, you can have motive and opportunity, you can't have a homicide charge."
Swafford is explaining the concept of corpus delicti, which translates to the body of the crime.
It is a fundamental principle of Western law. It means you cannot charge someone with a crime based solely on a confession or a rumor. You have to have independent, physical proof that a crime actually occurred.
Precisely. Even if the prosecution believes the landlady had a massive financial motive to want him dead, and even if she had the opportunity, they need physical proof of murder.
A skeleton found in a cold weather coat, with a pocket full of cash, no weapon, and zero bone trauma, does not meet the burden of proof for homicide.
The legal process demands certainty, or at least a preponderance of physical evidence.
So the legal machinery grinds on. Coroner Bob Johnson announces he is awaiting the final pathology reports from the state police investigators.
Once those are in, he plans to convene a coroner's jury. Their job will be to formally rule on the cause of death by forcing it into one of 4 rigid checkboxes: accident, suicide, homicide, or natural causes.
But while the legal system waits for pathology reports to categorize the tragedy, the archival file shows us how the family is left to grapple with the agonizing ambiguity of this situation.
The newspaper clippings capture their grief and their profound confusion in real time. You can clearly see how divided their beliefs are.
His uncle Leo and his sister Kathy remain utterly convinced that he was murdered.
Kathy had stated earlier to the press that her mind wasn't eased by the discovery of the body because she knew all along he was dead.
For them, the rumor of foul play is still the most logical explanation. They know the landlady stole his money, so they believe she must have taken his life, despite the lack of physical evidence in the car.
Then you have his ex-wife, Janet. She is caught in the middle of this terrible uncertainty.
She tells reporters that it just doesn't seem like he was the type to commit suicide, but in the same breath, she acknowledges his heavy drinking, his severe trauma from the war, and the fact that his mental state had been deteriorating.
She is desperately grasping for answers, and the archive records a truly tragic hypothesis she offers to the press.
She says, but of course you can't tell. The scales tip both ways. Some woman down at work said maybe a poisonous snake got in that car and bit him.
I read that and had to stop.
Logically, biologically, the idea of a fatal poisonous snake bite inside a car in rural Illinois in November, when the victim is wearing heavy boots, overalls, 2 pairs of pants, long underwear, and an insulated winter coat, makes absolutely no sense.
It makes no biological sense, but as archival researchers, we have to recognize that it makes perfect psychological sense.
Historical records capture more than just facts. They capture the human mind under immense stress.
Janet is confronted with a horrifying rumor of a shotgun murder on one side and the inexplicable, bizarre reality of him simply passing away silently in a junk car on the other.
It's a psychological bridge. A freak accident like a snakebite provides a cause where none is visible.
It removes the malice of a murder and it removes the despair of a suicide or exposure.
It's the human brain trying to construct a narrative to make sense of a senseless, nonviolent death.
It is a refusal to accept that sometimes vulnerable people just quietly fade away.
And perhaps the most heartbreaking detail in the entire file concerns Larry's 13-year-old son, Alan.
The paper notes that the teenager is clinging to the hope that the skeleton found in the car is not his father.
Even with the billfold found in the pocket, even with the dental records confirmed by the odontologist over the weekend, his denial acts as a powerful, necessary shield against the finality of the situation.
It perfectly encapsulates the human element that history often overlooks.
We have the forensic data, we have the legal quotes about corpus delicti, we have the timeline of the Secret Service investigation.
But all that data cannot process the grief of a 13-year-old boy, and it cannot fully explain the total reality of a life lost.
As we step back and look at the entirety of this archival file, it is as if the historical record has preserved 2 completely distinct versions of Larry Shelby.
On one side, you have the Larry who existed in the chaotic criminal rumors, the ghost who was the center of a federal paper chase, stolen treasury checks, forged duplicate vehicle titles, soil samples, and violent tales of shotgun murders.
That was the loud, public version of his disappearance that consumed the authorities for years.
And on the other side, you have the real Larry Shelby, the man revealed by the quiet, undeniable physical evidence.
A traumatized veteran, bundled up against the bitter November cold, surrounded by empty cans of his favorite soda, sitting silently in an overgrown car.
He was holding onto his own money and the genuine title to his truck the entire time.
He remained hidden in plain sight, just a stone's throw from his family's daily life, while the entire world searched everywhere else for him.
And that highlights the ultimate limit of the archive.
The clippings can tell us what he was wearing, how much cash was in his pocket, and when his dental records were matched in St. Louis.
But the archive cannot tell us why he walked across that yard and got into that specific car on that cold November day.
It cannot tell us what he was thinking or exactly how he passed away in the quiet of that vehicle.
The physical evidence brilliantly dismantles the lies and the fraud, but it doesn't give us the final truth of his internal experience.
The historical record often preserves the noise of an investigation. We have columns of text dedicated to the false leads, the federal charges, and the sensational quotes from fraudsters trying to cover their tracks.
But sometimes, as we see in this file from Fairfield, the most profound truth in the archive is the quietest one.
It is the reality of a vulnerable man who simply faded into the landscape of his own brother's backyard.
It is a reminder that history isn't just made in grand sweeping moments. It is often sitting quietly in the periphery, waiting to be found.
It makes you wonder. We started by picturing a normal Sunday morning, doing yard work, reading the paper, completely unaware of what might be right next to us.
When you look out your own window today at the overgrown patches of your own neighborhood, the abandoned spaces we walk past every single day.
What ordinary spaces in your environment might be holding silent histories? What quiet realities are sitting right there, completely obscured by the vines and the weeds of our daily routines?